For today's video, I'm going to be doing something that I have never done before, but something that I am very excited to do. I'm going to be ranking all the books that I read in 2022, and I want to do it for two reasons. Reason number one is I do want to know how many books I actually enjoyed a lot and how many books are kind of meh for me. And the second reason is I'm trying to start reading faster and I'm working on my technique. It's a little bit hard for me because English is my second language, but I'm still working hard to increase my reading speed. And I do want to increase the number of books that I'm gonna read in 2023 and keep myself accountable on that. I'm gonna be doing the tier ranking today. I'm gonna be dividing the books into four categories. The number of books that I read in 2022 is 36, and I do want to increase this number. It would probably be safe that I'll be able to do it by 50, maybe a little bit more. I'm gonna try to do my best. Some of the books I was reading, some of the books I had physical copy of, some of the books I had digital copy, or I was listening to the audiobook. So I'm gonna combine all three for the next year and try to increase the amount of books that I read. So let's look at the tier ranking that I created. This is my tiers that I have for all the books that I read in 2022. The first category are the books that I love to pieces. These are the books that I pretty much love every detail of that book. I would want to reread this book again. I would want to relive this story again. So this is my very top books that I read. Then I have enjoyable reads. These are the books that were quite nice to read, the books that I don't often think about. It was a nice time, but that's about it. Then I have the category Just Tell Me How It Ends. These are the books that are just dragging along for me, and I still keep reading them just to know how they're gonna end. The fourth category is I Can't Do This. These are the books that I stopped reading. There are two types of these books: the books that I stopped reading completely and I don't care how they're gonna end. And the second category is the books that I googled how they're gonna end. But still, the books that I can't do this. Let's go ahead and rank the books that I read in 2022. These books are in no particular order, they're all just combined, however. And the first book that I have is the 12 Dates of Christmas. It was supposed to be a very nice and romantic Christmas read. However, this book for me goes into the I can't do this category, just because the main character seemed to be very annoying to me, and I could not build the connection with any of the main characters, to be honest. It all felt quite cheesy, even though the Christmas books are supposed to be cheesy, and I completely understand that, but that was a little bit too much for me. I did not enjoy it. I didn't even reach 100 pages mark. I think I stopped this book at page 65, and I couldn't keep going with this book. The next book that I have is The Hating Game. That book will go for me to the enjoyable read. It was a fun read. I did watch the movie as well, and I did like the book. It prolonged a little bit on certain moments for me, but other than that, I can say that I enjoyed this book. I never think about this book again. If there was a second part, I would probably not read it, but I did have a good time reading this book. Then the next book is The Cruel Prince, and with this book, I'm just gonna go with Just Tell Me How It Ends. I did not enjoy the plot at all. I was trying to go through the first book because I heard that the second and the third book are so much better, so I pretty much just suffered through this book. I wanted to know how it's gonna end, and then I had to take a very long break until I get to The Wicked King, and The Wicked King went for me to I cannot do this, and I read maybe 100 pages of this book, even so, and then I just started reading the summary of the book, so if people who already read it, just because I wanted to know how this series is gonna end, but I did not want to spend my time reading these books. The next book that I have on my list is An Unkindness of Magicians, and I am debating whether to put this book in the enjoyable read or Just Tell Me How It Ends, because it's somewhere in between. I'd say that it was still kind of an enjoyable read. This book reminded me a lot of The Hunger Games, but in a magical world. It did have a lot of unnecessary details and descriptions that you kind of have to go through to know the end of the book. I did enjoy the ending as well, so I definitely would say that it goes to the enjoyable read. However, it was a little bit boring at the time. The next book that I have is Serpent and Dove, and this for me for sure goes to the enjoyable read. I did love this book, especially I did love the first 2/3 of the book. I thought that I'm gonna burn through the series, but then eventually the events started unfolding the way that I didn't predict. I was hoping that they kind of go the other way, and that for me ruined a little bit the whole excitement about the next book in the series. So I would probably not read the next books in the series, but I still enjoyed this book even though I was a little bit disappointed in how it ended. Then the next book I have is The Silent Patient, and I know many people love this book and I did enjoy it too, so it does go in the enjoyable read for me. There is nothing really to say about this book other than that it was fun to read. I did like the plot twist. I was taken off guard by the end of the book, so I did not see that plot coming. But as any other thriller, it's something that you read and then you forget about it. The next book that I have on the list is The House of Sky and Breath, and this book for me goes to Love to Pieces category. I love Sarah J Maas, I love ACOTAR, and I love the Crescent City series. I loved every single detail. I love the characters in these books. I wish these books were even longer than they are. They are, I think, approximately 800 pages each. So I adore these books. I adore her style of writing, and there is nothing else to say. I am in love with this book, and I wish I could relive this story again. The next series that I have here is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, and this book for me goes to Love to Pieces category. It's an investigation and the murder mystery. I loved the atmosphere of this book. I loved the characters. There was like a little bit of romance there. The romance is something that I do love in the books, but that was not too much of it, and it's totally fine. I loved the plot. I loved all the twists and turns. On that note, I'm gonna find the rest. So Good Girl, Bad Blood also goes to Love to Pieces category for me. Love the plot, love the idea of this book. Took me off guard many times. I didn't expect the ending. And then the last book is As Good as Dead, and this book goes to the enjoyable read for me. It was quite dark. It was a lot of psychological trauma that the main character was going through, and it was a little bit of a depressing read for me. I felt anxious reading it. I felt sorry for her. It's still a very, very nice series, and I did love the books. I did love the series. However, the last book is enjoyable read. The first two books I love to pieces. The next book that I have here is A Christmas Shopaholic. I actually listened to the audiobook of this one, and it goes to the Love to Pieces category. In this specific genre, I loved everything about this book. It was such a perfect choice for the Christmas time. It was packed with Christmas, it was packed with shopping. Maybe if I read this book any other time of the year, I would give it a lower rating, but I just enjoyed every moment of listening to this book. I can't really compare The House of Sky and Breath to Christmas Shopaholic just because they are on so different levels, but I'm rating fantasy books on a different scale than romantic comedies. So out of the romantic comedy category, I'd say that this was like Love to Pieces for me. And then the next book that I have is In a Holidays. This one I was also listening to the audiobook, and I'd say that it goes to the category Just Tell Me How It Ends. It was rather boring for me. I thought there was going to be a plot twist, but there was no, so the book was quite mellow for me. The atmosphere was there, but I did not enjoy it as much as I enjoyed Christmas Shopaholic. However, let me say this. I think I'm gonna put Christmas Shopaholic to enjoyable read, actually, because as I said, it cannot compare to The House of Sky and Breath and A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. However, I'd say that it is very, very close to Love to Pieces for me. The next book that I have is Nothing More to Tell, and this book, I actually do not remember the plot of this book, but I do remember that I enjoyed it a lot. So this book goes into the enjoyable read category for me. It wasn't It wasn't something really memorable, but I remember having a really good time reading this book. And then I have Act Your Age, Eve Brown. That also goes to the enjoyable read for me. It was actually my first audiobook that I've ever listened to, and I remember enjoying it a lot. I do remember liking both of the characters. I really had a good time reading it. And then we have The Undercover Bromance. And this book, I don't even know which category to put it in. I finished this book, but just because this is the first book of the book club. But I can still say, if it wasn't for the book club that we started, I would not want to finish this book. I would put it into the category I cannot do this. I have a whole review about this book. I will link this video somewhere on top. This book seemed to me very nationalistic at times and very sexist. I absolutely did not like the main female character. She was very, very annoying, and if I don't build connection with the main characters, it's something that ruins the whole book for me. So it's just ruins the whole purpose of reading. I would not finish this book if not for the book club, but I did finish this book to be able to discuss it properly, so I'm still gonna put it, I cannot do this. To be honest with you, this probably was the worst book of the year. Then I have The Spanish Love Deception. This book goes to Just Tell Me How It Ends category. Very simple plot. Characters were okay. The plot was fine. I just kind of wanted to rush through this book to know how it's gonna end. However, I should probably have stopped reading this book, but I did finish this book because I wanted to know how it's gonna end. Then the next book that I have is Belladonna, and this book goes to enjoyable read. I would definitely want to explore the next part of the series. I feel like the concept of this book was very fun. There is this girl and she cannot die, and when she tries to die, she meets death, and then they have interactions, and at the same time it's a murder mystery. She uncovers who murdered one of the main characters, the death character. He was portrayed in a such mysterious and appealing way that I want to get to know him better. The next book in the list is Better Than the Movies, and this is a YA romance book, no spice romance, and I say that it was an enjoyable read for me. I listened to the audiobook. I love the dynamics between the main characters. It was nice and funny and cheesy. I loved the female character of this book especially, so it was definitely an enjoyable read, something that I listened to in summer and was just the perfect time for that. The next book that I have is 8 Perfect Hours, and I put in the character in the category I cannot do this. I didn't finish listening to this book. It felt very boring to me. The whole idea is that there was the snowfall, and the main female character got stuck in the blizzard, and there was this guy who she met while they were waiting for the roads to get cleared up, and they had a great conversation, and she got suddenly obsessed with him, and she wanted him to ask for her contact information, and then eventually we find out that he actually has a girlfriend. Like, it was just very weird, and the main character seemed to me very obsessive. And then the next book that I have that I read is Once Upon a Broken Heart, and this book definitely goes to Love to Pieces category. I actually was very surprised that I enjoyed this book so much because it is kind of fairy tale-ish. This book has a lot of components that I would not like, but for some reason it just made complete sense to me, and I really, really enjoyed every single detail, and I enjoyed the world building in this book. So I'd say that this is definitely a Love to Pieces for me. Then I have In the Company of Witches, and this book I'm gonna put in the Just Tell Me How It Ends category. I read this book during autumn, so I was reading it during Halloween season, and it was supposed to give me this autumn vibes. It was a murder mystery in this tiny hotel in a tiny town in autumn, closer to Halloween, and it kind of did, but it kind of didn't work for me. The investigation wasn't that exciting. I was just waiting for the book to end. I did want to keep reading it to kind of still feel this Halloween vibes, but it just did not work for me the way I wanted it to work. And then, since we're talking about Halloween, the book that definitely gave me all the vibes that I needed, that I really, really loved, is Ravenfall. And this book goes to a enjoyable read for me. And this book specifically, it happened several days before Halloween, and it's just packed with different autumn drinks, with pumpkin lattes. When you read this book, it really feels like you are just strapped up in this cozy blanket and sipping on a white pumpkin hot chocolate. And it was such a pleasure to read this book. And there is part 2 that I'm planning to read for the next Halloween. The next book that I have, The Axe Hacks. This book goes to I Can't Do This. I didn't finish this book. It was quite average. I didn't enjoy their love story. I don't even remember what this book was specifically about. It was absolutely not memorable for me. I either skimmed through the book or I stopped reading. I think I just stopped reading this book. I heard that the second part is so much better, so I would still, yes, I remember actually, I did not finish this book, but I did hear that the second part is so much better, but I'm not sure if it's about the same characters. It might not be. So I am planning to read the part 2 of this series. The next book that I have is The Love Hypothesis. And this book for me goes to the Love to Pieces category. I really enjoyed this book. This is everything that I want to experience in a romance novel. I love the relationship of the main characters. I love the fake dating trope and enemies to lovers trope. It's not only that, it's also sunshine, grumpy sunshine, and I did enjoy that. It's like this romance is everything that I wanted to have. It's cheesy, it's cute, it's funny, it's a little dramatic in the end. It showed characters in a very vulnerable way that I also appreciate that a lot when it happens in the books. So that's I Love to Pieces. The same goes to the Love on the Brain. I think I even enjoyed this book more than the first one. Once again, this is Grumpy Sunshine and enemies to lovers, and this is my favorite trope when it comes to romance novels. So the next book that I have is The Witch Haven, and I was quite skeptical starting this book because of the reviews on Goodreads, but luckily, I still decided to give it a chance, and this book goes to the Love to Pieces. For me, I did not expect to love so much because it happens in the old times, and I'm more a contemporary reader, so I don't necessarily like books that happen in the old times. This was such an enjoyable read for me. I cannot wait to read part 2. I have this book requested in the library. Love the story. I love the main characters. I love the plot twists a lot in this book. There were a lot of those. I haven't expected of how this book's gonna end, so I cannot wait for the book number 2. The next book that I have is Not the Witch You Wed, and this book goes to the Love to Pieces category. This is even better than the Love Hypothesis series because this book has all of that. It has enemies to lovers, it has grumpy sunshine, but also it's set in a fantasy world. So it's just 6 stars for me. It was such an enjoyable time to read this book. Very excited again to read the continuation of the series. The next book that I have is One of the Girls, and this book goes to enjoyable read for me. I'd say that it's very close to Love to Pieces. I actually finished this book in just over a day. I think it took me a day and a half to finish it. It was very dynamic. The story was very fun. The only reason why it doesn't go to the Love to Pieces category is because the ending was a little bit predictive for me. I'd say that the ending was like 4 stars, but the book itself was 5 stars. It was a very, very enjoyable read. I did like how the story was portrayed from the perspective of all the girls that went to Greece on vacation, their relationship between each other and their secrets that's gonna be uncovered during the course of the book. So that was so much fun to read. I was also sick when I was reading this book. I think I had a very bad cold. So it was just perfect for me at the time. The next book that I have is The House Across the Lake. And this book competes with the Undercover Bromance for the worst book of the year. I did not like the main character. She really heavily abused alcohol, and on every single page she described how much she drank and that she was like trying to find the sources for her to get alcohol. And she was living in this huge cottage that was owned by her mother on the shore of the lake. The murder happened there. This book has a lot of mystical elements to it, ghosts and such, and it just ruined everything for me. So I did not finish this book. The next book is the book of the Most Precious Substance. That also goes into I Cannot Do This category. I didn't finish this book. It's supposed to be an erotic sort of romance, maybe. I'm not quite sure. This book is about the book hunters, and they are looking for this most precious book, the book of the most precious substance. According to this book, you can obtain these powers, I think, to rule the world if you do all the rituals in accordance of how they said. And if you do this book burns in the end. So there is only a few copies left, maybe 1 or 2 copies left in the world, and the main character is looking for this book, and it was just very boring for me, so I did not finish this book. The next one that I have is Verity, and this is quite a famous book, so I think it would not be a surprise if I put it to Love to Pieces category, because that was so enjoyable. At some points, I was even scared to read it, especially if you are someone who reads the books in the evening and at home alone. It creates this very spooky vibe. I loved all the twists in the plot. Ending was probably 4-star for me, but I still enjoyed every single piece of this book. The next book that I have is The Demon in the Wood, and this is a graphic novel. It is a prequel to Shadow and Bone series, and this book goes to enjoyable read for me. It was a very fast read. I think I finished this book in a couple of hours. It was fun to get to know the Darkling and some pieces of information about him when he was a kid and he was traveling with his mother, and certain things that shaped him the way he was portrayed in the Shadow and Bone series. I think I gave 3 stars to the Shadow and Bone series, but I did wanted to experience what was he like when he was a kid. The next book that I have is Small Town Big Magic, and this book I actually also read during autumn. It didn't have too good reviews on Goodreads. However, I enjoyed this book a lot. I put it in the enjoyable read for the month of autumn. It was a small town, a group of friends, and one of the girls has a regular life. She has her own store, and then it turns out that there is actually magic, and the magic exists in the town, and her friends are magical, but she doesn't have magic because at some point her memory of the magic was deleted by the council of this town because she did not have enough magic, and her magic started waking up again. This is the story of her trying to understand how to cope with this magic and pretty much relearn the world that she lives in again. And that was really, really fun, so it was an enjoyable read for me. Then I have The Court of Blood and Binding, and this was very fun. I feel like this book was inspired by ACOTAR series. It was a little bit more simple. There was less connection for me to the main characters. However, I still enjoyed this book a lot. It does go to the enjoyable read. I feel like in the beginning the events were a little bit rushed, and the author didn't spend that much time creating the characters themselves and just jumped right into the course of events that were happening, all the action. I do miss getting to know the characters a little bit better on a deeper level. I did purchase the second part, which is The Lord of Gold and Glory, and I'm very excited to read it. The next book that I have is The Sandman, and this is a graphic novel. I'm gonna put this book to enjoyable read. I have to say that I did like the TV show a little bit better. There were a couple of chapters in the graphic novel that were not turned into the episodes, and one of them was amazing, so I really was hoping that it can be presented in the TV show maybe in season 2 if it's gonna happen. It took me a long time to get through this book because design and the graphics and the pictures of this book were just so rich and so full of information that you want to spend quite a lot of time being on certain pages and on certain chapters. I'd say it was a really, really solid graphic novel. And the last but not the least book that I have that I'm actually still reading, but I can already rate it. I am closer to page 200, and I enjoyed this book so much. To be certain, I'm definitely gonna put it to the enjoyable read. I initially thought that that's the book that would be featuring the events happening Christmas time. However, it did feature the murder that happened during the month of December, but there was no reference to Christmas at all, and that's totally fine. We have the main character who came to live at this hotel, and then he found out that there is this murder that happened in the room that doesn't exist anymore. And the whole idea is that the main character is a writer, and he's trying to uncover who murdered this person. But not only we don't know who murdered the person, we also do not know who the murdered person is. So it's like a double mystery, very fascinating concept. I would not be surprised if by the end of the book, I'm gonna change it to the Love to Pieces category. This is all the books that I've read, and I should say that I do want to try to read more books in the year to come. And I set a goal for myself for now to read 50 books. However, I will try to read even more than that, because I'm going to be actively listening to the audiobooks as well, and I feel like that will be quite manageable. That being said, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon.